As yoga teachers, we often fall into the trap of thinking that we have to have exciting, fun sequencing every class we teach. But in reality, the boring classes are often more effective and people tend to like them a bit better. So this video is going to break down the myth behind sequencing so that you can feel more confident giving boring classes that are actually going to be more supportive for your students. I'm Brea Johnson of Heart Bones Yoga, and Heart Bones Yoga for Teachers is your place for yoga teacher tips, for anatomy-informed yoga information, tutorials, education for you as a teacher so you can teach more inclusive classes, you can feel more confident. And if you haven't already listened to the Yoga Teacher podcast, which is even more in-depth and awesome, go to the link below and find it, binge it, love it, because you will. Okay, so like, subscribe, do all that stuff. But let's start talking about why boring classes might be better. So when I say boring classes, I don't mean dry, boring, you're unenthused as a teacher, you sound like this. Boring classes is more about bringing consistency, progress, and a sense of success to your students. And yes, teaching boring classes is a little clickbaity of a title, but that's also the game we have to play here on these social medias so that we can have eyes on this. So thank you if it worked. You're here watching this right now. So it's not just boring classes, but it's about finding ways for you to have really successful classes. I'm actually a teacher who loves bringing in new and novel movements, and I'm a huge advocate for new and novel movements because your nervous system and your brain love doing new things. It's a really great way to bring the mind-body connection more awake and alive in our students, bringing the yoga, right? The mind and the body awakened and alive. So add a little dash of the new and novel, but let's have a lot of our sequences be more boring. A boring class means that you're doing things that are simple yet effective. You're teaching things in a clear and focused way. You're giving time for your people in the classes to learn maybe a new movement pattern, to really have that anchored and familiar in their body. A simple way to think about teaching boring classes is to use a cooking metaphor. So us as teachers, as we write our sequences, we think of ourselves as the chef, right? We are the chef. We are creating the recipe. But what is realistic is that a lot of really good tasting recipes are tried and true. A lot of really good chefs aren't reinventing the wheel. They're not making a brand new dish that's never been done before, because there's only so many ways to prepare food. Just as there's only so many ways to move our body. The human body can only move in so many ways, so many flexion and extension, adduction, abduction, all these ways of movement, it's finite. And so what we're doing as yoga teachers and chefs, to continue that metaphor, so that chef is creating the base ingredients, putting them together in a familiar way. And then what we might do is add a little spice, add a little, change up the flavoring a little bit. But the base ingredients of meat and potatoes, vegetables and potatoes and rice, whatever those base ingredients are, it's how we spice them up. And that's what we're doing as yoga teachers. We kind of have that, like meat and potatoes, or if you're a vegetarian, like vegetables and rice, let's say, as our core ingredients. And then we get to go, okay, let's do something new and novel. So we're going through the warrior series. Everybody knows that in my classes, let's say. That's a familiar move. But then when we're in warrior 2, we're going to do a new and novel thing. We're add a little spice, and we're going to do something as simple as externally rotating your arms. Okay, fun. Or maybe we're going to move the arms. You're still in warrior 2 position, but maybe you're going to reach the arms to the side like that. So there's a base of familiarity with a little added spice. Because we also think about the way that the body is most of the day. Most of our bodies are sitting in chairs. Most of us have probably low back stuff and tight hips and tight shoulders. So your meat and potatoes, so to speak, of your yoga class are probably going to be most of the time focusing on the hips and shoulders. So that's the boring part, right? I hope this is making sense and that analogy is working. The boring, so-called boring part is the fact that we're just always moving our hips and our shoulders, but maybe we're changing up the way that we do that as a good, effective teacher. Another reason why boring classes are actually effective is that you can see how proven this is in the popularized yoga culture. What I mean by that is when we look at the different popular yoga styles that have come and gone over the years, a lot of them, let's say like Ashtanga yoga, are all based in the same sequence. So some of these really popular styles like Ashtanga, you could be doing them for years and you're always doing the same sequence. There's not much variation in them, and they've been successful. People seem to like them. And so for me, I'm not a big fan of that kind of thing. I never have been. I teach in a different way. I prefer a different thing and way of practicing. But you can see that there's sort of been, it's been consumer tested, so to speak. There are a lot of people that love that familiarity. And why? Well, if we think about it, the world, there's a lot of chaos and a lot of uncertainty. Life in general has uncertainty. And so when you have your yoga practice and you have a familiar series, so all your world, your life can be in chaos, and then you can go, excuse me, onto your yoga mat and know what's expected in this class. I'm going to go to my Ashtanga class and I know I'm going to do this sun salutation. I'm going to do this chaturanga. I'm going to do this lunge. It's familiar. It's clear, it's what to expect. There's finally some certainty. So I don't really blame anybody for wanting to do these practices that are always the same. So even if you don't teach in that way, having that compassion and that understanding of us in this world right now and how us as humans are kind of wired, you can offer that same sense of certainty for your students. Consistency. Consistency can be very supportive for the nervous system. When you bring a sense of familiarity into your classes, when it's not something wild and crazy every single time, you're helping your students to support and feel a little bit grounded in their nervous systems. You're helping also for them to see progress. They can see over time, wow, when I first started doing that lunge, when I first started doing yoga, it was so tight, and now 4 months later, because of the consistency and frequency of that lunge showing up in my classes, oh, I can see that my hips are feeling a lot better. That's how a lot of your students will think and feel, and you might have felt that when you first started teaching yoga too, practicing yoga too. So the takeaway here, my friends, is what are the so-called meat and potatoes of your class? What are those things that you're going to do most often? And it's okay. So if you think, well, oh man, I taught this sequence or a variation of this sequence for 5 weeks in a row, people must be bored. They probably aren't. There's probably something kind of nice about that. And then if you're really worried about it, that's where you add the spices. That's where you change things up a little bit. That's where you put a dash of a new movement here, a dash of a different movement there, but you've got your core movements that you know are supportive for your students. And what gives you the most confidence in this is learning more about the human body. I found when I switched my teaching and really brought in applied anatomy into my yoga poses and into my asana, I found that I was doubting my classes way less because I felt very clear and confident in how the body moves and what the body needs for functional movement and longevity. And so then I was confident that if I was bringing those aspects into my classes, I was helping people in their bodies. And if it looked a little boring sometimes, because we're always doing a shoulder blade circle in almost every one of my classes, that's okay, because I know that's a really good movement that people need to do more often. So I hope that helps, my friend. Get more education on your applied anatomy. We've got so many videos here. Go to heartandbonesyoga.com to find our even more classes and courses that you can take. But trust the boring classes with a little added spice of new and novel movements, and your classes will be great and your students will feel good, safe, and supported. Now, do you have questions about this? If you have questions about this, leave them in the comments. I'm always here to listen and to read and respond. If you have suggestions for more yoga teacher tools that you'd like to get for an upcoming video, put that in the comments as well. Thank you so much for being here.